She couldn't remember. He didn't know. The explosion had taken everything. Lyra Hale, the Serpent Queen, had been sent to Newark with orders. Eliminate Orion Danes. One shot. Clean. Professional. She never made it to the target. Her own advisor put her in a car with a bomb. She jumped. Not far enough. Orion Danes saw the explosion from 50 yards back. Saw the woman crawling from wreckage, collapsing on scorching asphalt. "Boss, don't stop. Could be a trap." Stop the car. He was saving his own assassin. He didn't know that yet. But what he discovered next changed everything. All he saw. A stranger dying. Black hair catching firelight. Cobalt blazer smoking. Blood trickling from her temple. A compact handgun holstered at her hip with professional precision. When he rolled her onto her back, storm gray eyes snapped open. Sharp, assessing. Calculating threats in microseconds. Her hand flew to his wrist. Trained grip. Controlled pressure. Muscle memory surviving even as conscious memory drowned. "Easy," he said. "You're safe." But she wasn't safe. She was trapped in a body that remembered how to kill but had forgotten why. Trapped with the man she'd been sent to eliminate. "I can't remember," she whispered. "Anything." The amnesia was real. The danger? Absolutely real. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from ashes, or if a story about enemies becoming something more already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button right now and comment where you're watching from. We're building a family of people who understand that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is trust again. A second explosion sent him covering her body with his own, shielding his future killer from debris. The intimacy, accidental. The protection, pure instinct. The consequences, devastating. "Stay with me. I need you conscious. I don't know who I am. We'll figure it out later. Right now, I just need you alive." One wrong move and everything would fall apart. He lifted her, carried her to his SUV, took her home despite protests, despite warnings, despite the gun at her hip and the trained reflexes her amnesia couldn't erase. Professional. Dangerous. His. At least for 4 days. 4 days before her memory returned. 4 days of her reaching for his hand during medical exams. 4 days of him calling her Sky because her eyes looked like storm clouds. 4 days of trust building between a mafia boss and the woman sent to kill him. But there was one thing he didn't know about his closest ally. Then the memories flooded back. "You're Orion Danes, the Wolf of Newark. And you're Lyra Hale, the Serpent Queen." The woman sent to erase him, the woman he'd saved. Now she had to choose, complete the mission, or protect the man who'd shown her what it meant to be human. What happened next changed everything. Let me take you back to where this story really began. The first explosion hit the night like a punch. 1 second, the highway outside Newark was just dark asphalt and white lines. The next, a sedan ahead of Orion Danes turned into a ball of fire. Brakes screamed all around him. His black SUV skidded sideways as his driver yanked the wheel and fought to keep control. Flames rose, orange and wild, licking at the sky like hungry fingers reaching for stars that had already abandoned this stretch of road. A second blast came from the front of the car. Shards of metal rained across the highway, bouncing off his windshield in a percussion that sounded like the end of the world arriving in pieces. "Boss, keep driving," Hollis barked from the passenger seat, his hand already on his weapon. "We don't know what that is." "Stop the car," Orion ordered, voice calm and final. The SUV came to a rough halt on the shoulder. Behind them, other cars stalled, doors opening as people leaned out, frozen between fear and curiosity, and the very human instinct to flee danger they couldn't understand. That moment, everything in the room changed. In front of them, the sedan burned bright, twisted in the middle of the road like something that had been crushed by an angry god. Then he saw her. A dark shape on the asphalt, about 15 feet away from the flaming car. A woman. She was on her side, one arm stretched out like she'd tried to crawl and collapsed halfway. Her long black hair spilled across the pavement in waves that caught the orange light, turning it copper at the edges. Orion's chest tightened. He threw open the door. "Stay inside," Hollis snapped, already unbuckling his seatbelt. "We don't know what we're walking into. Could be a trap, boss. Could be bait." "Then they set the wrong trap," Orion said, already moving. He couldn't explain why, but danger was closing in. The heat hit him the second his shoes left the shoulder and found the center lane. The air smelled like burnt rubber, gasoline, and something sharp and chemical that stung his throat and made his eyes water. The fire crackled loud, hungry, swallowing what was left of the car with the kind of violence that felt personal. He jogged closer, scanning the scene the way years in his world had taught him to do. No other cars involved, no obvious shooter, no one running away. Just that sedan, the fire, and the woman. She lay twisted on the asphalt, her body arranged in the terrible geometry of violence. Her clothes were singed at the edges, but he could see enough to know they had been expensive before the explosion. A cobalt blue blazer, now torn and smoking. Black pants that looked tailored. Leather ankle boots with silver buckles that caught the firelight. And a gun. There was one detail everyone missed. A compact handgun was tucked at her waist, half hidden under the blazer. The kind of weapon you didn't buy at a pawn shop or carry because you watched too many crime shows. Professional, deliberate, deadly. His eyes found it before his mind had time to form the thought. Her fingers rested only inches from the grip, like even unconscious, some part of her remembered where salvation lived. Orion slowed, raising his hand slightly to show he wasn't holding anything. "Hey," he called out, voice low but firm enough to cut through the roar of flames. "Can you hear me?" No answer. He knelt beside her, feeling the heat from the burning car at his back like a living thing trying to push him away. The asphalt was hot through his pants, scorching even through expensive fabric. With care, he reached for her shoulder and rolled her gently onto her back. For a moment, all the noise around him faded. She was young, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Her skin was pale under the soot and ash that streaked across her cheek like war paint she hadn't chosen. Blood trickled from a cut at her hairline, sliding dark and slow along her temple before disappearing into the black silk of her hair. Her face was striking even through the damage. Strong cheekbones, full lips slightly parted, the kind of beauty that made you think of dangerous things. Thick black lashes lay still against her cheeks. Then her eyes snapped open. And then, the gun clicked. They were gray. Storm cloud gray. Sharp and clear despite the pain that must have been screaming through every nerve in her body. The kind of eyes that assessed threats in microseconds, that calculated odds while you were still deciding whether to be scared. She inhaled hard, like someone breaking the surface of a deep pool after too long underwater. Her hand flew to his wrist on instinct, grip surprisingly strong for someone who'd just survived a car bomb. Her fingers wrapped around his forearm with the precise pressure of someone who knew exactly how to control another person's movements. "Easy," Orion said, not pulling away. "You're safe. You're out of the car." Her gaze jumped from him to the fire, confusion and fear flashing across her face in a sequence so fast he almost missed it. The confusion won. "The car," she said, voice hoarse and cracked from smoke inhalation. "It blew up." "I noticed," he said. It pulled the corner of her lips up for half a second. Something that might have been a smile in another life, on another highway, before fire and blood. Fear and pain dragged it down again. People were starting to shout from the other cars now. Someone yelled about calling 911. Someone else argued about the fire spreading to the grass on the median. Sirens were faint in the distance, still miles away but getting closer with every second. "Boss," Hollis called from behind him, closer now. "We need to go. Cops are coming." Orion ignored him. His next decision would decide whether he lived or died. He checked the woman's legs with quick, practiced hands. The kind of efficiency you learned when emergency rooms asked too many questions and loyalty mattered more than licenses. No obvious broken bones, but she jerked in pain when he touched her left side, a sharp intake of breath that told him everything he needed to know. "Ribs," she rasped, the word coming out like broken glass. "Feels like they're on fire." "Welcome to the club," he said, still checking for injuries with the clinical detachment that kept people alive. "Can you move your toes?" She wriggled them in her boots. He nodded. Her hand, still gripping his wrist, trembled. Not from weakness, from something else. Something that looked like terror wearing determination's face. "I can't remember." "Remember what?" he asked, meeting those storm-gray eyes. Her gaze searched his face, desperate, unfocused, like she was trying to find something she'd lost in the space between his features. Anything. Something didn't add up. And the truth was darker than he expected. The second explosion was smaller, but closer. The front of the sedan collapsed inward as something inside blew. Maybe the engine. Maybe a fuel line that finally gave up. The shockwave hit them in a hot gust that smelled like death and chemicals, and the woman cried out, instinctively trying to curl away from the blast. Orion moved without thinking. He dropped over her, covering her body with his own, one hand cupping the back of her head to shield it from debris. A chunk of metal flew past and clanged against the road a few feet away, spinning like a deadly top before coming to rest. "Boss!" Hollis shouted, much closer now, his footsteps pounding on asphalt. "Get the car ready!" Orion barked back, not moving from his protective position. "We're taking her with us." "You can't be serious." "Now, Hollis." The woman's breath came fast against his neck, warm and unsteady. He could feel her heartbeat racing under his chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the pulse of danger thrumming through the air. Her fingers tightened in his shirt, holding on with surprising strength for someone who claimed not to remember anything. Professional strength. Trained strength. "Stay with me," he said quietly, close to her ear so only she could hear. "I need you conscious." She looked up at him, gray eyes glassy with pain and shock. In the reflection of the flames, they looked almost silver, metallic and unreal, like something forged rather than born. "I don't know who I am," she whispered, and the fear in her voice sounded genuine enough to be either truth or the most dangerous lie he'd ever heard. Someone in the room was lying. But who? "We'll figure it out later," he said. "Right now, I just need you alive." He pushed himself up and slid one arm under her knees, another behind her back. The position from the image, her body cradled against his chest, her head tilted back, completely vulnerable, yet somehow still dangerous. She gasped when he lifted her, the sound sharp and pained. "Hurts?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," she hissed through clenched teeth. "But don't you dare drop me." He almost smiled, not planning to. The heat at his back was intense now, the fire spreading despite the lack of fuel, feeding on its own momentum. He carried her quickly toward the SUV, his stride sure and steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Other people were running now, away from the explosion, towards safety that didn't include getting close to burning vehicles. Hollis ran ahead, yanking the back door open with more force than necessary. "Orion, think," he said under his breath, low enough that only his boss could hear. "Blown car, armed woman, no plates on the sedan. This screams organized hit." "I know," Orion said. And your answer is to bring her into your car? Yes. But this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Hollis muttered something sharp under his breath, probably cursing in the 3 languages he spoke when angry, but climbed in first, making space. Orion placed the woman gently on the back seat. She gritted her teeth, one hand flying to her ribs, fingers splayed across the damage like she could hold herself together through will alone. I need you to stay awake, he told her, his voice carrying the weight of command that made grown men comply without question. Can you do that? She forced her eyes open again, focusing on him with obvious effort. You're very demanding for someone I just met. We're going to be in a moving car together, he said. This is the friendly version of me. He nodded to his driver. Go. The SUV peeled away from the scene just as the first police cruisers appeared at the far end of the highway, their blue and red lights painting the night in colors that meant questions Orion didn't want to answer. From here on, the rules of the game changed. In the back seat, he focused on the woman. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, the kind that preceded shock. Sweat beaded at her hairline despite the cool air blasting from the vents. Up close, he could see small burns along her forearm where the heat had kissed her skin, leaving angry red marks that would blister by morning. Her black hair smelled like smoke and gasoline. Under it, there was something else. A faint floral note. Jasmine, maybe, or something equally expensive. Clean. Controlled. The kind of scent that cost more per ounce than most people made in a week. He lifted the hem of her blue blazer with care, checking for more serious injuries. She flinched, then went still with the kind of discipline that came from training, not instinct. You're safe, he repeated, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. I just need to see where it hurts. Under the blazer, bruises were already blooming along her ribs like dark flowers, spreading across pale skin in shades of purple and black that would only get worse. No broken skin, no protruding bones. That was something. And at her waist, he finally got a proper look at the gun. He knew something that no one else in the building did. It was holstered at her hip. Not in the sloppy way of someone who bought a weapon for protection and never trained with it, but in a comfortable, practiced position that let her draw fast. The holster itself was custom leather, worn smooth in places from repeated use. The gun was a Sig Sauer P365, compact, reliable. The kind of weapon you carried when you knew how to use it and expected to need it. He slid it out carefully, checked the safety, and kept it in his hand. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes, which had been drifting closed, snapped open. Is that mine? She asked, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been recognition or might have been pure survival instinct. Was, Orion corrected gently. Right now, it's evidence. Evidence of what? He met her storm gray eyes, seeing the calculation happening behind the pain and confusion. That, he said quietly, is exactly what we're going to find out. Outside the window, Newark's lights blurred past as they drove deeper into the night, carrying a stranger who might be a victim or might be the most dangerous thing Orion Danes had ever brought into his world. The gun was warm in his hand. Her eyes never left his face. And somewhere in the city behind them, a car burned itself to ashes, taking all its secrets with it. Orion knelt on scorching asphalt, the heat from the burning sedan at his back threatening to melt the soles of his shoes. The woman lay twisted before him, her body arranged in the terrible angles that violence creates. Her cobalt blue blazer was torn at the shoulder, edges smoking where fire had tried to claim her. Black pants, tailored and expensive, were scuffed at the knees. Evidence of the crawl she'd attempted before collapse claimed her. But it was the gun that held his attention. What he didn't know was that someone was watching. A Sig Sauer P365, holstered at her hip with the worn comfort of daily carry. not tucked away like an afterthought or shoved awkwardly into a waistband. This was professional. This was someone who knew exactly where her weapon lived and could reach it in the dark, in chaos, in the split second between alive and dead. Her fingers rested inches from the grip even now, unconscious instinct keeping her close to salvation. "Hey!" he called out, voice cutting through the roar of flames. "Can you hear me?" No answer, just the crackle of fire consuming metal and the distant wail of sirens getting closer with every heartbeat. He reached for her shoulder, rolled her gently onto her back. For a moment, the world narrowed to just her face, pale skin streaked with soot, blood trickling from a cut at her hairline, thick black lashes against high cheekbones. Young, late 20s, the kind of beautiful that made you forget to breathe. Then her eyes snapped open. He realized he wasn't alone. Someone else had arrived. Storm gray, sharp. Assessing him in the microsecond between unconsciousness and waking, calculating threat levels while most people were still trying to remember their own names. She inhaled hard, a drowning gasp. Her hand flew to his wrist, grip iron strong despite the pain that must have been screaming through every nerve. Not panicked flailing, controlled, precise. The kind of hold that could break bones if she wanted, positioned exactly where it needed to be to control his arm. "Easy," Orion said, not pulling away. "You're safe." "You're out of the car." Her gaze jumped from him to the inferno behind them, confusion flickering across features too controlled to show real fear. "The car," she rasped, voice scraped raw by smoke. "It blew up." "I noticed." The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile, dying before it fully formed. People were shouting now. Someone screamed about the fire spreading. Sirens grew louder, close enough to make Hollis shift nervously somewhere behind him. "Boss," his bodyguard called, urgent. "We need to go." Orion ignored him, checking her legs with practiced efficiency. No brakes. She jerked when he touched her left side, a sharp hiss escaping through clenched teeth. "Ribs," she managed. "On fire." "Can you move your toes?" She did. He nodded. Cataloging injuries with the clinical detachment that kept people alive when hospitals asked too many questions. Her hand trembled against his wrist. Not from pain. From something else. "I can't remember." "Remember what?" Those storm gray eyes searched his face, desperate, lost. "Anything." But the real question was, who planned it? The second explosion came without warning. The sedan's front end collapsed inward, something deep in its mechanical heart finally surrendering to the flames. The shockwave hit them in a scorching gust, and the woman cried out, trying instinctively to curl away. Orion moved before thought completed itself. He dropped over her, covering her body with his own, one hand cupping the back of her head to shield it from the debris raining down around them. A chunk of twisted metal flew past, clanging against asphalt close enough to feel the displaced air. Her breath came fast against his neck. Her heartbeat raced beneath his chest. Rapid, strong, alive. Her fingers twisted in his shirt with surprising strength, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had just tried to kill her. "Stay with me," he said quietly, close to her ear. "I need you conscious." She looked up at him, eyes glassy with pain but still sharp, still calculating even through the shock. In the firelight, they looked almost silver. "I don't know who I am," she whispered. The fear in her voice sounded real enough to be either truth or the most dangerous lie he'd ever heard. "We'll figure it out later," Orion said, pushing himself up. "Right now, I just need you alive." He slid one arm under her knees, another behind her back. The position made her vulnerable. Head tilted back, body cradled against his chest, completely dependent on his strength. She gasped when he lifted her, the sound sharp with pain. Hurts? Yes, she hissed. But don't you dare drop me. Her next words hit him harder than any bullet. Something in his chest tightened. Humor in the face of agony was either courage or training so deep it overrode survival instinct. Either way, it made her more dangerous than the gun at her hip suggested. The heat at his back intensified as he carried her toward the SUV. Other people were running now, fleeing the explosion, seeking safety that didn't involve burning vehicles and the acrid smell of chemicals turning to poison in the air. Hollis had the back door open, his face tight with the kind of disapproval that came from knowing your boss was making a catastrophic mistake and being unable to stop it. "Orion, think," Hollis said, voice low and urgent. "Blown car, armed woman, no plates on the sedan." His eyes flicked to the gun still holstered at her waist. "This screams organized hit." "I know." "And you're bringing her into your car?" "Yes." He trusted her, and that was his biggest mistake. Hollis muttered something in Russian that definitely wasn't a blessing, but climbed in first, clearing space with sharp, efficient movements. Orion placed the woman gently on the leather seat. She immediately curled slightly, one hand flying to her ribs, fingers splayed across the damage like she could hold herself together through will alone. Her breathing came shallow and rapid, the precursor to shock. "I need you to stay awake," he told her, using the voice that made men twice her size obey without question. "Can you do that?" She forced her eyes open, focusing on him with obvious effort. The storm gray had darkened, pupils blown wide with pain. "You're very demanding," she said, words slightly slurred, "for someone I just met." "We're going to be in a moving car together. This is the friendly version of me." He nodded to his driver. "Go, now." The SUV lurched into motion, tires biting asphalt as they accelerated away from the scene. Through the rear window, Orion watched the first police cruiser appear at the far end of the highway, blue and red lights painting the night in official colors that meant questions he couldn't answer. In that moment, the entire balance of power flipped. In the back seat, the woman's breathing hitched. He turned his full attention to her, cataloging details with the sharp focus that had kept him alive in a world where missing one tell got you dead. Her skin was too pale. Sweat beaded at her temples despite the cool air blasting from the vents. Burns marked her forearm, small, angry welts where the explosion had kissed her skin. Her hair smelled like smoke and gasoline. Underneath, something floral. Jasmine, maybe. Expensive. The kind of scent that cost more than most people earned in a month. He lifted the hem of her blazer carefully. She flinched but held still with the discipline of someone who'd learned to endure. "You're safe," he said. "I just need to see the damage." Bruises bloomed across her ribs like dark flowers, spreading in real time. No broken skin, no protruding bones. But the pattern suggested impact. Hard. Deliberate. The kind you got from being thrown by an explosion rather than walking away from one. His gaze dropped to the gun. Custom leather holster, worn smooth from use. The Sig Sauer itself was clean, well-maintained, positioned for a fast draw. This wasn't a woman who carried for show. This was someone who expected to need it and knew exactly how to use it. He slid the weapon free, checked the safety, kept it in his hand. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes, which had been drifting closed, snapped open. "Is that mine?" "Was," Orion corrected gently. "Right now, it's evidence." "Of what?" He met her storm-gray gaze, seeing the calculation happening behind the pain. "That's exactly what we're going to find out." This was only the beginning of a much bigger war. The SUV turned onto a side street, leaving the highway and its burning secrets behind. In the rearview mirror, smoke rose toward a sky that offered no answers. The SUV carved through Newark's industrial district, leaving the chaos of the highway behind for streets that knew how to keep secrets. Orion watched the woman in the ambient glow of passing streetlights, the way her hand never strayed far from where her gun should be, how her eyes tracked every turn despite the pain clearly radiating through her body. Professional awareness, the kind you couldn't fake. "What's your name?" he asked. She opened her mouth, closed it. Frustration flickered across her features. "I don't know. Try." But this wasn't even the most shocking part. Her brow furrowed, concentration drawing lines between her eyes. "Nothing. It's just empty, like trying to remember a dream after waking up." Her voice cracked. "I don't know my name. I don't know where I live. I don't know if I have family or—" She stopped, breath hitching. But when the SUV made a sharp left turn, her hand shot out to brace against the door with perfect timing. Weight shifted to protect her injured ribs. Muscle memory. Training. The kind of reflexes that took years to build. "You knew that turn was coming," Orion observed quietly. She looked at her own hand like it belonged to someone else. Yes, I did." Wonder and fear mingled in her expression. "How did I know that?" "Your body remembers what your mind forgot." She met his gaze, those storm-gray eyes searching for answers he couldn't give. "What does that mean?" "It means you've been trained, extensively." He gestured to how she sat, back straight despite the pain, positioned to see both exits. Awareness tracking every person in the vehicle, even while claiming total amnesia. "Your instincts are professional." "Professional what?" Hollis turned from the front seat, his expression dark. "That's the question, isn't it?" His right-hand man had been hiding something from him. The woman's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. Whatever she'd forgotten, she hadn't forgotten how to face down hostile interrogation. Orion leaned forward slightly. "You need a name. Something to anchor you until memory comes back." "You think it will?" "I think you're too stubborn to stay lost forever." That almost smile again, dying before it fully formed. "You don't know me. I know you made jokes about me dropping you while your ribs were broken. I know you assessed everyone in this car within 3 seconds of waking up. I know your hand keeps reaching for a weapon that's not there anymore." He paused. "So yes, I know you're stubborn." She studied him for a long moment, and he had the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated by someone who saw more than she should. "What would you call me?" "Sky," he said, surprising himself with how easily the name came. "Your eyes. In the firelight, they looked like storm clouds." "Sky," she repeated, testing it. The name settled over her like a borrowed coat, not quite fitting, but better than nothing. "And you are?" "Orion." "Just Orion?" "For now." Hollis snorted from the front seat but said nothing. For the first time, he wasn't in control. The SUV turned onto an unmarked road, headlights cutting through darkness that seemed thicker here, more deliberate. Trees crowded close on both sides, branches forming a canopy that blocked out the stars. "Where are we going?" Sky asked, and he heard the edge in her voice. Awareness that she was trapped in a vehicle with armed strangers, heading into darkness, completely dependent on the mercy of a man who'd pulled her from an explosion for reasons she couldn't understand. Somewhere safe. Safe for who? Both of us, hopefully. The trees opened up suddenly, revealing a compound that didn't exist on any map. 12-foot walls topped with cameras that tracked their approach. A gate that looked decorative until you noticed the reinforced steel beneath the ornamental iron. Guard towers disguised as architectural features. Security lights blazed to life as they approached, washing the vehicle in brightness that felt like exposure. Sky's breath caught. "This is a fortress. This," Orion said quietly, "is home." He thought it was over, until he noticed something strange. The gate swung open. The SUV rolled through into a courtyard illuminated by lights that left no shadows for secrets to hide in. The building beyond was modern, glass and steel dressed up to look civilized, but the bulletproof windows caught the light in ways regular glass never did. "Home for a king," Sky whispered, and there was something in her voice that might have been recognition, or might have been pure instinct understanding what kind of kingdom required walls this high. The SUV stopped. Hollis was out first, hand near his weapon, scanning the compound with the paranoia that kept people alive. Orion climbed out, then turned to help Sky. She was already moving, swinging her legs out with gritted determination despite the pain that whitened her knuckles. He offered his hand. She stared at it for a long moment, weighing trust against necessity, independence against the simple fact that her body was betraying her with every breath. Finally, she took it. Her grip was strong despite the tremor running through her. He pulled her carefully upright, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin, the shallow rasp of her breathing. "I don't know who I am," she said quietly, looking up at him, "but I know I shouldn't trust you." "You're right. Then why did you save me?" Orion studied her face, the sharp intelligence in those storm-gray eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she held herself like a weapon even when broken. "I'm still trying to figure that out." The medical bay occupied the compound's east wing, all white walls and chrome surfaces that smelled like antiseptic and the particular sterility of a facility designed to treat injuries that couldn't involve hospitals. Dr. Quinn looked up from her tablet when they entered, her sharp eyes taking in Sky's condition with the clinical assessment of someone who'd seen every kind of damage humans could inflict on each other. "Explosion?" she asked, already pulling on gloves. "Car bomb," Orion confirmed. "Of course it was." Quinn gestured to the examination table. "Let's see the damage." Everyone thought the deal went smoothly, but they were wrong. Sky moved to the table with the careful precision of someone cataloging each pain point, each limitation. She sat on the edge. And when Quinn moved to help her lie back, Sky's hand shot out, not attacking, just deflecting with the automatic efficiency of trained reflexes. "Sorry," Sky said immediately, looking as surprised as Quinn. "I don't know why I—" "Muscle memory," Quinn said, unfazed. "You've had medical training, or combat training, possibly both." She waited, letting Sky choose to cooperate rather than forcing it. "I need to examine you. That means touching injuries. Can you handle that?" Sky's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Good. Lie back." Orion stayed near the door, watching as Quinn worked with the methodical efficiency that made her invaluable. She checked pupil response, examined the cut at Sky's hairline, palpated ribs with gentle but thorough pressure that made Sky's breath hitch. 3 cracked ribs, Quinn announced. "Mild concussion. 1st and 2nd degree burns on the forearm. You're going to hurt for weeks, but nothing that won't heal." She pulled a pen light from her pocket. "Follow the light. Don't move your head." Sky's eyes tracked the movement. "Good. Now the amnesia. Tell me what you remember before the explosion." "Nothing." "Nothing specific or nothing at all?" "Nothing at all. It's like, before the fire, I didn't exist." What followed next was completely unexpected. Quinn's expression remained neutral. "What about skills? Can you remember how to read?" "Yes." "Basic math?" "Yes." "Languages?" Sky opened her mouth, then stopped. Her brow furrowed. Yes. English. And..." She said something in what sounded like French, then Italian, then another language Orion didn't recognize. Her eyes widened. "I speak 5 languages. How do I know that but not my own name?" "Because skill memory and episodic memory use different neural pathways," Quinn explained, making notes. "You have retrograde amnesia, You've lost access to personal memories before the trauma, but retained learned skills and general knowledge. She set down her tablet, meeting Sky's gaze directly. The good news is it's likely temporary. Head trauma combined with psychological shock can create a block. As your brain heals, memories should start coming back. How long? Days, weeks, maybe months. Or, Quinn paused, choosing words carefully. Something might trigger them all at once. Sky's hand moved to her ribs, fingers hovering over the bandages Quinn had applied. And if they don't come back? Then you build new ones. This choice would define the rest of his life. Quinn pressed gently against Sky's left side, checking for internal damage. Sky gasped, and her hand shot out. Not to Quinn, but to the empty air beside the table. Searching. Reaching for something that wasn't there. Orion, Quinn said quietly. Come here. He moved to the table. The moment he came within reach, Sky's hand found his, fingers wrapping around his wrist with desperate strength. Sorry, Sky breathed. I don't know why It's fine, Orion said, and meant it. Quinn continued her examination, pressing against another bruise. Again, Sky's grip tightened on Orion's wrist, her breathing going shallow. Not passing out, just anchoring herself to something solid while pain tried to pull her under. Interesting, Quinn murmured. What? Sky asked. You're using him as a pain management technique. Grounding through physical contact. Quinn smiled slightly. Usually that's something people do with loved ones. Someone they trust, completely. I don't trust him, Sky said, but her hand didn't let go. Your conscious mind doesn't, Quinn agreed. Your unconscious mind clearly disagrees. If people like Rhett Cross who betray the ones who trust them most make your blood boil like they do mine, hit that subscribe button and join us. Drop a comment. Let's stand together against everyone who's ever sold out someone who believed in them. She checked the burns next. Another hiss of pain. Another tightening of Sky's fingers around Orion's wrist. Then the shoulder, the hip, each injury catalogued with professional detachment, while Sky held on like he was the only thing keeping her tethered to consciousness. Finally, Quinn stepped back. You're lucky. Painful, but survivable. I'll prescribe something for the pain, but nothing too strong. I want you coherent in case memory starts coming back. She looked at Orion. She needs rest, real rest, not whatever you're planning. I'm taking her to the guest suite. Good. And Orion? Quinn's expression was serious. Whoever she is, she's been trained to a level that requires significant resources. Time, money, expertise. People don't invest that kind of training in civilians. I know. Do you? Quinn glanced at Sky, who was staring at her own hand still wrapped around Orion's wrist like she couldn't quite believe it belonged to her. Because that woman is either going to be your greatest ally or your most dangerous enemy. I know that too, Quinn sighed. Then you're both idiots. Perfect for each other. Sky's grip on Orion's wrist loosened finally, but she didn't pull away completely. Her thumb pressed against his pulse point, checking his heartbeat maybe, or just needing proof that something in this broken night remained steady. Thank you, she said quietly to Quinn. Thank me by not dying in my medical bay, Quinn replied. I just cleaned. The guest suite occupied the compound's north wing, far enough from the main operations to offer privacy, close enough that escape would be impossible without triggering a dozen alarms. Orion opened the door to reveal a space that managed to be both luxurious and fortified. Floor-to-ceiling windows with bulletproof glass, furniture expensive enough to seem welcoming, security cameras disguised as smoke detectors, a cage dressed up as hospitality, and suddenly, he realized he was being played. Sky walked in slowly, taking in every detail with the systematic awareness of someone cataloging exits and weaknesses. She stopped at the window, pressing her palm against the glass. "I can see the whole compound from here," she said quietly. "That's intentional. So I can't leave without you knowing." "So you're safe," Orion corrected. "This room is the most secure location in the facility. Nothing gets in without going through me first." She turned to face him, and in the low lighting, her storm gray eyes looked almost black. "Why are you protecting me? You don't know me. I could be anyone. A criminal. A killer." Her voice dropped. "The person who was supposed to be in that car. You weren't supposed to be in that car." "How do you know?" "Because if you were the target, they would have made sure you were dead." He moved closer, careful to keep distance between them. "That explosion was meant to kill someone else. You survived because you were lucky or skilled or both." Sky's jaw tightened. "I don't feel lucky." "Lucky people rarely do." He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for family. She wrapped her arms around herself. Not for warmth, but for the comfort of holding something together that felt like it was coming apart. "I woke up in fire and blood, and I don't know who I am. I speak 5 languages I don't remember learning. I know how to." She demonstrated a defensive move, then stopped, staring at her own hands. "I know how to hurt people. I can feel it in my bones. If someone threatened me right now, my body would know exactly what to do. But I don't know my mother's name. I don't know if I have a mother. I don't know if anyone is looking for me or if I disappeared and no one even noticed." Her voice cracked on the last word. Orion watched emotions flicker across her face. Fear and frustration and a grief so profound it hurt to witness. She was drowning in the absence of herself. "I'm not even real," she whispered. "I'm just Sky. A name you gave me because you saw storm clouds. I'm a person built from nothing by a stranger who pulled me from fire. What if the real me never comes back? What if I'm lost forever in this?" She gestured helplessly at her own body. "In this borrowed existence?" "You didn't disappear." She looked at him, desperate for anything that felt like truth. "How can you know that?" "Because I'm looking at you right now." He moved closer. Close enough to see the tears she was fighting not to shed. "You're right here, breathing, thinking, feeling too much and trying not to show it because whoever you are, you were taught that vulnerability is weakness." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he touched her shoulder. Gentle, grounding. "The memories you're missing? Those are just history. But you, the person standing in front of me, making jokes about broken ribs, reaching for weapons that aren't there, calculating exit strategies even while falling apart, you're not gone. You're right here." A tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "I'm scared," she admitted, and the confession seemed to cost her something precious. "I know." He didn't want revenge. He needed it. What if I'm someone terrible? What if the memories come back and what if I'm the kind of person who deserves to forget? Orion studied her face. The sharp intelligence, the barely restrained strength, the vulnerability she was allowing him to see despite every instinct screaming at her to hide it. "Then you get to choose who you become next. The past doesn't own you, Sky. It informs you, but it doesn't define you." She shook her head. "You don't know what you're protecting. I could be your enemy." "You could be," he agreed. "But right now, you're someone who needs help, and I'm someone who can give it." He squeezed her shoulder gently, then released her. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start looking for answers. And if the answers are dangerous, then we deal with them. Together." She searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the betrayal that experience had apparently taught her to expect. Why? Why what? Why help me? You're clearly not ordinary. This compound, your security, the way everyone moves around you, you're someone important, powerful. So why risk that for a stranger? Orion considered the question, surprised to find he didn't have a clean answer. Maybe I'm tired of only helping people who can help me back. Maybe I saw you in that fire and remembered what it's like to need saving. Or maybe... He paused, choosing honesty over strategy. Maybe I looked in your eyes and saw someone worth the risk. Sky's breath caught. You're either the best man I've ever met, or the most dangerous. Probably both. For once, he wasn't thinking like a boss, but like a man about to lose everything. That almost smile flickered across her features, lasting a fraction longer this time. Get out. I need to fall apart in private. If you need anything, I'll find you. She gestured to the cameras. I assume you'll be watching. Only the hallways. Your room is private. Surprise crossed her face. You're giving me privacy? You're giving me trust by staying. Seems like a fair trade. He moved to the door, but her voice stopped him. Orion? He turned. She stood backlit by the window, small and fierce and broken and unbreakable all at once. Thank you. For pulling me from the fire. For not leaving me there to burn. You're welcome, Sky. He closed the door, hearing the lock engage, keeping threats out, not keeping her in. In the hallway, Hollis waited with the expression of someone who'd been holding back criticism through sheer force of will. You're getting attached, Hollis said flatly. I'm being careful. You're being reckless. We don't know who she is. Neither does she. That's not reassuring, boss. That's terrifying. Hollis lowered his voice. What happens when she remembers? What happens when the woman we're protecting turns out to be the weapon pointed at us? Orion looked back at the closed door, remembering the way Sky's hand had found his during Quinn's examination. The desperate trust in someone who claimed to trust no one. Then we hope, he said quietly, that she chooses us anyway. 3 days passed in careful orbit. Sky recovering in the guest suite, Orion managing empire business that didn't pause for mysteries or wounded strangers. They crossed paths during meals, during medical check-ins, in hallways where conversations stayed surface level and safe. She was healing, the bruises fading from black to purple to yellow-green, the burns scabbing over, but the memories stayed buried, frustration building behind those storm-gray eyes with each empty day. He should have walked away, but then he saw it. On the 4th night, Orion found her in the compound's library, a room designed to look civilized despite the reinforced walls and panic buttons hidden in the crown molding. She sat curled in a leather chair, surrounded by books she'd pulled down and abandoned, each one a failed attempt to trigger recognition. Any luck? He asked. I know the plot of every Dostoevsky novel. I can quote Shakespeare and Neruda and poets I don't remember reading, but I can't remember my own birthday. She closed the book in her lap with more force than necessary. My brain is a museum of useless knowledge about someone else's life. It's your life. You just can't access it yet. That's worse. She stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the compound. At least if it was gone completely, I could mourn it and move on. This is like standing outside a locked house and seeing all your belongings through the windows but not being able to get in. Orion's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Marcus, his intelligence chief. Urgent. I need to take this, he said. Sky waved him off, returning to the books with determined focus. Hidden in the files was a secret that could destroy them all. He stepped into the hallway, keeping the library door slightly ajar. Marcus's voice came through tense and clipped. We have a situation. Vincent called. Says there's chatter about a missing person. Someone important went dark 4 days ago. Who? Lyra Hale. Orion's blood went cold. The Lyra Hale? Queen of the Serpent Syndicate herself. According to Vincent, she left for a meeting and never arrived. No body, no witnesses, just gone. Marcus paused. Boss, if Lyra Hale is alive and being hidden, things are going to escalate fast. Every family in the territory will be scrambling to either find her or make sure she stays lost. Do they think she's dead? Her second in command, Rhett Cross, is telling people she is, pushing for a succession vote, but half the syndicate doesn't believe it. They want proof, and Cross can't provide it. Another pause. Where would you hide a missing Mafia Queen if you wanted her to disappear? But he had no idea a bigger force was controlling everything. Orion's gaze drifted to the library door. Through the gap, he could see Skye, silhouetted against the window, one hand pressed to the glass like she was trying to push through to freedom. I don't know, Orion said carefully, but whoever's hiding her is playing a dangerous game. Or they don't know what they have. Could be she's actually dead and Cross is lying. Could be she's alive and someone's protecting her for leverage. Marcus's voice dropped. Either way, we need to know where our interests lie. If Lyra Hale is alive, we need to decide whose side we're on. I'll handle it. Keep me updated on Vincent's intelligence. He ended the call, mind racing through implications like dominoes falling in deadly sequence. Lyra Hale, the Serpent Queen. Known for being ruthless, brilliant, and so carefully hidden that most people had never seen her face, just felt the consequences of her decisions. A woman who spoke 5 languages, who carried herself with authority even when broken, who moved with combat training so ingrained it survived amnesia. A woman with storm-gray eyes who'd survived an explosion meant to kill her. He didn't realize this moment would come back to haunt him. Orion looked back at the library. Skye had moved to the bookshelf, running her fingers along spines like she was searching for something that would make her real again. He should tell her. Should take her aside and explain what he'd just learned. Watch her face for recognition or denial. But some instinct, the same one that had made him stop the car, pull her from fire, bring her into his home, kept him silent. If Skye was Lyra Hale, she didn't know it yet. And the moment she did, everything would change. The vulnerable woman seeking answers would become the Mafia Queen who'd carved her empire from blood and strategy. The person reaching for his hand during medical exams would remember she was supposed to be his enemy. Inside the library, Skye's hand stilled on a book. She pulled it down slowly. A collection of mythology, stories about gods and monsters and the thin line between them. Orion, she called out. He stepped back into the room. Yes? She held up the book, expressions strange. I know this story. Orion the Hunter, killed by a scorpion sent by jealous gods. Her eyes met his. Your parents named you after someone who was murdered for being too powerful. They had high expectations, or a dark sense of humor. She set the book down, moving closer with the grace that pain had stolen, and was slowly returning. Who was on the phone? Business. What kind of business involves saying someone's name like it's a death sentence? Too perceptive, too sharp. The complicated kind. Is it about me? The question landed between them like a thrown knife. Why would it be about you? He asked carefully. Because you've been protecting a stranger for 4 days with resources that suggest you don't do anything without reason. Because every time Hollis looks at me, he sees a threat. Because Quinn said I was trained to a level that requires serious investment. She stepped closer, searching his face. Because you're looking at me right now like you just learned something that changes everything. Skye? That's not my name. The words came out sharp, frustrated. It's something you gave me because you felt sorry for me. But it's not real. I'm not real, I'm just... What she found in the envelope froze her in place. She stopped mid-sentence, swaying slightly. Her hand went to her temple, face going pale. Sky? Lyra, she whispered. The world tilted. What? Lyra. Someone called me Lyra. Her breathing quickened. I heard it. In my head. A voice saying, Lyra Hale, you need to see this, and I... She looked at him, eyes wide with recognition that was cracking through amnesia like ice breaking under pressure. That's my name. Lyra Hale. I'm Lyra Hale. The dam broke. Are you Team Lyra and Orion? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. This story is about to explode. Memories flooded back in a torrent. Faces, names, places, all the pieces of a life she'd forgotten slamming into consciousness with brutal force. She gasped, stumbling back, hand reaching for support that wasn't there. Orion caught her before she fell. Easy. Breathe. I remember, she said, voice breaking. I remember everything. Sky, no, Lyra, pulled away from Orion's grip, backing toward the window with the careful steps of someone whose entire reality had just restructured itself. Her hand moved instinctively to her hip, reaching for the gun that wasn't there, muscle memory reasserting itself now that conscious memory had returned. You're Orion Danes, she said, and her voice had changed. Harder. More controlled. The vulnerability she'd shown for 4 days burning away like morning fog under harsh sun. The Wolf of Newark, territory boss for the eastern seaboard. And you're Lyra Hale. He kept his voice even, non-threatening. The Serpent Queen. What she said next shattered his trust instantly. She laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. Is that what they're calling me now? Queen? Her hand went to her ribs, fingers pressing against healing bruises. I was driving to a meeting with my advisors. Rhett Cross said we needed to discuss expansion into Philadelphia. But the route he gave me... Her eyes closed, remembering. The route was wrong. I realized it too late. The car behind me pulled alongside and I saw the device. I jumped before the explosion. But not far enough. Rhett Cross tried to kill you. Rhett Cross succeeded. Her eyes opened, storm gray and furious. Lyra Hale died in that explosion. I felt her die. Felt everything I'd built for 10 years turn to ash and fire. She gestured at herself. This is just the ghost. The leftover pieces that forgot to stop breathing. You're alive. That's not nothing. It's worse than nothing. She moved to the bookshelf, fingers trailing over spines she'd touched an hour ago as a stranger, and now touched as someone who remembered learning to read in 3 languages before she was 12. I built the Serpent Syndicate from my father's ruins, took a dying empire, and made it powerful enough that families twice my size feared my name. I learned every language, every strategy, every way to kill someone that wouldn't be traced back to me. I sacrificed everything, friends, family, any chance at a normal life, to become Lyra Hale. Under the floorboard, he discovered a truth he wasn't ready for. She turned to face him, and he saw grief in her expression that had nothing to do with lost memory. And Rhett Cross, the man I trusted more than anyone, sold me out. Probably to the highest bidder. Maybe to the Castellanis, or the Irish families who've wanted my territory for years. Maybe to someone I've never heard of who saw opportunity in a queen without an heir. Her voice cracked. I gave him everything. Access to every decision, every weakness, every secret that could destroy me. And he used it to put me in a car with a bomb. That's not your failure, Orion said quietly. That's his betrayal. It's the same thing in my world. She wrapped her arms around herself, the same gesture she'd made as Sky, but now it looked like armor instead of vulnerability. A leader who can be betrayed is a leader who deserves to be replaced. That's the rule. That's how succession works. You show weakness, someone stronger takes your place. Sky. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't call me that. Sky was the lost girl who needed saving. Sky reached for your hand in medical exams and believed you when you said she was safe. Sky doesn't exist. She was just amnesia and gratitude and… She stopped, jaw tightening. She was a lie. She was you without the armor. Then she was useless. Lyra moved toward the door with the decisive energy of someone who'd remembered she had an empire to reclaim. I need to leave. Need to contact my people, the ones Rhett hasn't corrupted. Need to take back what's mine before he solidifies power. Orion stepped into her path. You need to think. I've done nothing but think for 4 days while my syndicate was stolen from me. Exactly. 4 days. He held her gaze. Rhett has had 4 days to consolidate, to spread the narrative that you're dead, to position himself as the rightful successor. If you walk out of here and announce you're alive, he'll know you remember everything. He'll move against you immediately, and this time he'll make sure there's no body to resurrect. This single decision gave him the upper hand again. So what do you suggest? I hide here while he destroys everything I built? I suggest you strategize. You're the Serpent Queen. You built an empire through planning, not impulse. So plan. He moved closer, voice dropping. Rhett thinks you're dead. That's your advantage. Use it. Figure out who else was involved in the betrayal, who's still loyal, what resources he's claimed and what he hasn't. Then strike when he's not expecting it. Lyra studied him, and he could see the calculation happening behind those sharp eyes. Why would you help me? Our territories border each other. We've been in a cold war for 2 years over the port access in Atlantic City. My death benefits you. You could expand into my territory while Rhett scrambles to hold it, pick off the pieces before the other families even mobilize. I could. So why don't you? Orion considered the question, the same one Hollis had been asking, the one he'd been avoiding because the answer felt too much like sentiment in a world that punished soft choices. Because I looked in your eyes 4 days ago and saw someone who didn't deserve to burn. And I'm looking at you now and seeing someone who doesn't deserve to have her life's work stolen by a traitor. He paused. And because Sky might have been amnesia and gratitude, but she was also courage and strength and the kind of person who makes jokes while her ribs are broken. That wasn't the armor talking. That was you. Something flickered across Lyra's face. Surprise, maybe? Or the echo of gratitude she no longer wanted to feel. You're either incredibly noble or incredibly stupid. Probably both. She almost smiled. Almost. If I stay, if I plan this with you, what do you want in return? The chance to prove that alliances can be built on something other than fear and obligation. That's naive. Maybe. But I'm tired of the alternative. He had no idea the night would end in blood. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. The kind of silence that meant she was weighing options, calculating costs, deciding which version of the future cost her less. Rhett called a succession meeting for tomorrow night. The heads of my 5 divisions will vote on whether to accept his leadership or hold out for proof of my death. How would they vote? 3 would vote for him immediately. They've always resented answering to a woman half their age. 2 might hold out, but only if they have reason to believe I'm coming back. She met his eyes. I need to be at that meeting. Need to walk in while Rhett is making his case and watch him realize he failed. That's suicide. That's justice. Her voice was cold, certain. He tried to kill me. He took everything I built and claimed it as his own. He betrayed me, and in my world, betrayal has one consequence. Death. Yes. Orion studied her. The fury in her eyes, the rigid set of her shoulders, the way she stood like she was ready to walk into fire if it meant taking Rhett with her. You want revenge. I want my life back. Those aren't the same thing. In my world, they are. He moved closer, close enough to see the tears she was fighting not to shed, the grief hiding behind rage. Sky, you didn't fail your people. They failed you. Rhett failed you. The advisors who believed his lies failed you. The system that made you into a weapon instead of a person failed you. His voice gentled. You don't owe them revenge. You owe yourself a future that's more than just blood. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I've been where you are. I've wanted revenge so badly I could taste it. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose something different. He paused. You can go back to being the Serpent Queen. You can reclaim your throne and execute Rhett and anyone who stood with him. You can rebuild your empire on the same foundation of fear and strategy that led to this moment. Or what? Or you can build something new. Something that doesn't require you to sacrifice everything human in yourself to maintain power. Lyra's jaw clenched. That's not how my world works. Then change the world. She stared at him like he'd suggested she could fly by thinking happy thoughts. You're asking me to forgive betrayal, to walk away from the empire I built, to let Rhett Cross live after he tried to murder me. I'm asking you to choose who you want to be next. The memories came back. Sky. Lyra. But you get to decide what to do with them. I told you not to call me Sky. Why? Because she was weak? Because she wasn't real. She was the most real version of you I've seen. He held her gaze. The woman who trusted me to protect her, who made jokes about broken ribs, who reached for my hand when she was scared. That was you without the crown, without the reputation, without the armor. That was Lyra Hale before the world taught her she had to be a queen. A tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. I can't just walk away. My people, your people chose Rhett, or chose to stand by while he stole your empire. The ones who are loyal will find you. The ones who aren't? They don't deserve your protection. Lyra's breathing was ragged now, caught between fury and grief and the terrible freedom of having a choice she'd never allowed herself before. What are you proposing? I'm proposing we take down Rhett together, expose his betrayal, prove you're alive and he's a traitor, but we do it strategically, not impulsively. We gather evidence, build a case, make it impossible for him to spin the narrative. He paused. And then you decide what kind of queen you want to be. The kind who rules through fear, or the kind who builds something better. You make it sound simple. It's not. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. She studied his face, searching for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. Why does this matter to you? Because Sky matters to me, and I think she still exists, somewhere under the crown you're trying to put back on. I'm Lyra Hale. I know, but maybe you could be both. Lyra stood at the window, forehead pressed against bulletproof glass, watching compound lights reflect off security fences designed to keep the world at bay. Orion waited, giving her the space to arrive at the decision he couldn't make for her. Finally, she turned. You're asking me to trust you, to believe that a territorial boss I've been in conflict with for 2 years suddenly wants to help me out of the goodness of his heart. I'm asking you to trust yourself, Orion corrected. The version of you that survived for 4 days without armor and still found strength. The version that knew she deserved more than burning. And if I stay? If I let you help me take down Rhett? She crossed her arms. What then? Then we figure it out together. Build an alliance that's more than just 2 empires pretending not to hate each other. He moved closer, voice dropping. I'm tired of the old ways, Lyra. The constant war, the betrayals, the necessity of being harder and colder than the person next to you just to survive. There has to be something better. And you think I'm that something better? I think we could be. Together. She laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You barely know me. I know you reached for my hand when you were in pain. I know you made jokes instead of screaming. I know you survived an explosion and amnesia and remembering everything you lost, and you're still standing here instead of falling apart. He paused. I know 4 days ago I looked at a stranger and decided she was worth saving. And I'm looking at you now and making the same choice. I'm not asking to be saved. I know. I'm offering to be your partner instead. The word hung between them. Partner. Not subject. Not asset. Not tool to be used and discarded. An equal. Lyra's jaw tightened. If we do this, if I agree to your alliance, it's not surrender. I'm not giving up my empire. I'm not walking away from everything I built. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to rebuild it differently. Stronger foundations, less betrayal, more trust. Trust is what got me blown up. Misplaced trust. Rhett betrayed you, but that doesn't mean everyone will. She studied him, and he could see the war happening behind those storm-gray eyes, between the queen who'd learned that vulnerability meant death and the woman who'd reached for his hand and felt safe for the first time in a decade. What exactly are you proposing? I'm choosing a side. He said it simply, without hesitation. Yours. We take down Rhett together. Expose his betrayal. Reclaim your empire. Make sure everyone knows what happens to people who think they can kill the Serpent Queen and get away with it. And after? After, we decide what kind of alliance serves us both. Shared territory access. Mutual protection. Trade agreements that benefit both families. A partnership built on respect instead of fear. You're talking about fundamentally changing how our world operates. Yes. It won't work. The other families will never accept it. Then they'll learn to adapt or fall behind. He held her gaze. I'm not asking for your answer tonight. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that there's more to life than just surviving the next betrayal. Lyra moved to the bookshelf, fingers trailing over spines again, but this time with recognition, with memory. When I was 12, my father taught me that the only person you can trust is yourself. Everyone else is either an asset or a threat, and you treat them accordingly. She pulled down a book, one she'd probably read a dozen times. I've lived by that rule for 18 years. It's kept me alive. It's made me powerful. And it's made me alone. Orion finished quietly. Yes. The admission came out raw. I have 500 people who answer to me. I have divisions across 3 states. I have enough money to buy small countries. And I was driving alone to a meeting with my most trusted advisor who tried to murder me for my throne. She looked at the book in her hands. What does it say about my life that the person who knew me best in the last 4 days was someone I met while covered in blood and ash? It says you're ready for something different. Or that I'm weak. Strength isn't the absence of vulnerability, Lyra. It's choosing to be vulnerable with the right people. She set the book down, turned to face him fully. If I agree to this, if we form this alliance, I need to know you're committed. That this isn't strategy. That you're not positioning yourself to take advantage when my guard is down. I'm committed. Prove it. How? She moved closer, each step deliberate. Tomorrow night, Rhett holds his succession meeting. 5 division heads will vote on his leadership. I want you there, standing beside me when I walk in, making it clear to everyone in that room that I have the backing of the Wolf of Newark. That's a declaration of war on anyone who stands with Rhett. Yes, which is why it proves commitment. If you're just playing strategy, you'll find a reason to stay distant, maintain deniability, protect your own interests. She stopped directly in front of him. But if you mean what you say about partnership, about changing how this world operates, you'll stand with me tomorrow night and face the consequences together." Orion studied her face, the challenge in her eyes, the vulnerability she was trying to hide beneath bravado. She was testing him, seeing if his words matched his willingness to risk. "I'll be there," he said. "Not behind you, not protecting my own interests. Beside you, equal partners facing down betrayal together." Something cracked in her expression. Relief, maybe, or surprise that someone had passed her test. "You're either the bravest man I've met, or the most foolish." "Probably both." She almost smiled. "Almost. I should hate you. Should see you as the enemy. A rival boss trying to exploit my weakness. But when I look at you—" She stopped, jaw tightening. "When I look at you, I remember being Sky. I remember trusting you. And I hate that I want to keep trusting you even though Lyra Hale knows better." Maybe Lyra Hale knows exactly what she needs. She just hasn't let herself admit it yet. And what do I need? Someone who won't betray you for power. Someone who chooses you over strategy. Someone who sees both Sky and Lyra and values them equally. The tear came before she could stop it, tracking down her cheek in the low light. "I don't want to go back to her life," she whispered. "Not if it means losing this." This? Whatever this is. This moment where someone looks at me and sees a person instead of a queen, where I can be scared and angry and vulnerable and it doesn't make me weak, where I don't have to calculate every word, every gesture, every interaction for strategic advantage. She wiped the tear away roughly. Sky got to be human for 4 days. Lyra hasn't been human in a decade. And her voice broke. "I don't know how to be both." Orion reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand, the same one that had gripped his wrist during medical exams, that had reached for him when pain overwhelmed strategy. "You don't have to choose. You can be the queen who reclaims her empire, and the woman who allows herself to trust. You can be powerful and vulnerable, strategic and human. Lyra and Sky." He squeezed her hand gently. "You contain multitudes. The world just needs to catch up." She looked at their joined hands, and for a moment, she was both versions of herself. The ruthless Mafia Queen and the vulnerable woman who'd forgotten how to hide. Tomorrow night changes everything. Yes. If we survive, if we take down Rhett and I reclaim my empire, things can't go back to how they were. Between us, between our families. I don't want them to. You're risking your reputation. You're standing with the other families. They'll see you as weak for choosing alliance over conquest. Let them. I'm choosing you, Lyra. Both versions, the queen and the woman, the strength and the vulnerability, all of it. She pulled her hand away, but it wasn't rejection, just self-preservation. The instinct to protect herself from caring too much before survival was guaranteed. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we go to war. Together." "Together," she agreed, and the words sounded like a promise. Dawn broke over the compound in shades of gold and amber, light catching on security fences that looked almost beautiful when you forgot they were designed to keep danger out. Lyra stood in the armory, watching Hollis methodically check weapons with the expertise of someone who'd been doing it for decades. "You sure about this?" Hollis asked, not looking up from the Glock he was inspecting. "No," Lyra admitted, "but I've never been sure about anything important." Orion entered, already dressed for war. Dark suit, no tie. The kind of understated elegance that suggested money and power without needing to announce it. He looked at Lyra, taking in the transformation. She'd traded borrowed clothes for her own. Black pants, fitted jacket, boots that added 2 inches and made her look like the queen she'd forgotten she was. "You ready?" he asked. "To walk into a room full of people who either want me dead or think I already am?" Never been more ready. Hollis set down the gun. Boss, last chance to reconsider. We go in there, stand with her against Rhett, and we're making enemies of everyone who's aligned with him. That's at least 3 families. Maybe more. I know. And you're still doing this? Yes. Hollis looked at Lyra, expression unreadable. You better be worth it. I'm not, Lyra said honestly. But I'm trying to be. Something shifted in Hollis's expression. Not quite approval, but maybe the beginning of respect. Then let's make sure you survive long enough to prove it. He handed her the Glock. Checked and loaded. Try not to shoot my boss. No promises. They moved toward the exit. Orion, Lyra, Hollis, and 3 additional security whose names Lyra hadn't learned, but whose competence was evident in every movement. The kind of protection you brought when walking into a succession meeting you weren't invited to. As they reached the door, Hollis stopped. Almost forgot. Found something this morning you should see. He pulled out his phone, showed them a photo. It was a tattoo. A crown wrapped in serpents, detailed and intricate, on someone's inner forearm. But it was the words beneath that made Lyra's breath catch. Loyalty to the true queen. Where did you get this? She demanded. One of your division heads, Reina Torres. She came to our territory yesterday asking questions about a woman in a car explosion. Said she'd heard rumors her queen might be alive and being protected by a rival boss. Hollis met Lyra's eyes. Said if Lyra Hale was alive, she needed to know she still had people willing to die for her. Lyra stared at the tattoo, emotions warring across her face. Reina, she was one of my first recruits. I pulled her out of a trafficking operation when she was 17. Trained her myself. I thought... Her voice cracked. I thought Rhett would have gotten to her. Convinced her I was dead or turned her against me. Some loyalties run deeper than strategy, Orion said quietly. Lyra looked at him, then at the tattoo, then back at Orion. She'll be at the meeting tonight. If I walk in with your backing, with proof I'm alive and reclaiming what's mine, she'll stand with me. And the others? Reina commands 60 soldiers personally. If she stands, they stand. That's enough to shift the balance. Lyra's expression hardened into something sharp and deadly. Rhett thought he could steal my empire. Thought he could convince everyone I was dead and they should accept his leadership. But he forgot that some people don't follow power. They follow the person who pulled them from hell and gave them purpose. She pulled out her own phone, typing quickly. I'm texting Reina, telling her to be ready. That the rumors are true and tonight we take back what's ours. She might be compromised, Hollis warned. Could be a trap. Could be, Lyra agreed. But I didn't build my empire by playing it safe. I built it by trusting the right people and destroying the wrong ones. She hit send. Tonight, we find out which category Rhett falls into. The phone buzzed immediately. 3 words. For the Queen. Lyra smiled, not the almost smile of Sky, but the dangerous smile of a woman who'd just realized she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. Let's go remind them who I am. They walked out into morning light that felt like the start of something. Revolution or disaster. Salvation or damnation. Orion took Lyra's hand as they approached the vehicles, and she let him. Not because she needed the support, but because she wanted it. Because Sky had learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, and Lyra was finally ready to believe it. Last chance to back out, she said as they reached the SUV. Not interested. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then. He squeezed her hand. You're worth the risk, Lyra. Both versions of you. The Queen and the woman. The strength and the vulnerability. She looked at him. Really looked. Seeing not a rival boss or potential enemy, but someone who'd chosen her when he had every reason not to. When this is over, when Rhett is dealt with and I've reclaimed what's mine, I'm going to kiss you. Probably. Maybe. I'll hold you to that. You better. They climbed into the SUV, Hollis taking the driver's seat with the resigned expression of someone who knew his boss was making history or committing suicide, possibly both. As they drove through the compound gates toward the city and the succession meeting and the confrontation that would determine everything, Lyra looked down at her phone. Reyna's message glowed on the screen. For the Queen. Not for the crown. Not for power or territory or strategic advantage. For her. Orion's hand found hers in the space between seats, and she held on. Not because she was scared, but because she'd finally found someone worth holding on to. Whatever happens tonight, she said quietly. Thank you. For pulling me from the fire. For protecting Sky. For choosing Lyra even when it was dangerous. Whatever happens tonight, Orion replied. We face it together. Hollis glanced in the rearview mirror. You two done being disgustingly romantic? Because we've got a war to win. Lyra laughed. Genuine, unguarded. The sound of someone who'd forgotten how to be human and was finally remembering. Then let's go meet them. The SUV accelerated into the city, carrying two people who'd started as enemies, become allies, and were choosing to be something neither had words for yet. The Serpent Queen and the Wolf of Newark, driving toward a reckoning that would change everything. Behind them, the compound disappeared into distance. Ahead, the city waited, full of betrayal and loyalty, danger and possibility, the chance to reclaim an empire or build something entirely new. Lyra looked at Orion, saw him looking back, and knew with absolute certainty that whatever they were building together, it would be worth every risk. The war was just beginning. But for the first time in a decade, Lyra Hale wasn't fighting alone.